Hey, this is AJ. Welcome back to the Handyman process. In this video, I'll be explaining my job of the week and how I made about $700 net profit on a tough job. Stand by. All right, so this week's job of the week was replacing a rotted out shed floor. I've done a few of these. It's hard, back-breaking work. I'll tell you that right now. Not a lot of people want to do it, but it's a money maker, so I do it. So I got an inquiry, and I'll put some pictures up here of the inquiry I received. Somebody had found me through a referral, I think through Facebook, reached out to me. We started the dialogue, and the dialogue was very quick in this one. It was essentially, hey, I have a rotted out shed floor. Sure, can you send me some pictures? Here are the pictures. Can you give me some dimensions? Yes, here are the dimensions. Okay. Then I had one follow-up question. Do you know if the subfloor is rotted out? And they said, we don't know. They said, it's a little bit bouncy. I said, okay, so it's probably rotted out. So what I normally do in these situations is I'll have a priced option just in case the subfloor is rotted out and I have to replace it, because I normally don't carry all that stuff with me because it's kind of hit or miss whether you have to replace it or not. So I priced it out as a separate option, and you'll see I came in, I think it was, what was it, $1,400 and some change for everything kind of all included. They loved the price, said, sure, when can we get on your schedule? Fortunately, I had a cancellation that week, so I was able to get him in on a Friday, and then I started the work. And like I said, this is back-breaking work. I would not recommend doing this in the middle of the summertime. Make sure you have plenty of fluids and all that stuff, because I just worked my butt off all day long, roughly 6 hours straight, just tearing out the floor, cutting it out, getting it out any way I could, rebuilding the subfloor, and then laying down the plywood. So in terms of materials and supplies that I used for this particular job, I had some plywood. I wanted to get one of those holders for the plywood. It's a Craig tool, and you'll see it in the picture that I put in there. That helped out quite a bit because this was heavy plywood. I think it was like about 3/4 inch plywood, pressure treated, and it was still wet. So these things weighed a ton. Unfortunately, I didn't have a helper on this one, so it was me by myself. So by having that tool and being able to carry everything in, really helped out quite a bit. We don't see in the pricings, I also had to go grab a couple of 2x6s, but it wasn't a whole lot of money. And I had a few other things on my receipt that I can basically amortize over some other jobs. So for the rest of the video, I'm gonna put the numbers that I charge breaking down, as well as kind of some video, slow motion video or time-lapse video of kind of the job. If you've been watching me for a while, you know that I always do the time-lapse, because when you do these types of jobs, you got to remember there's always somebody else out there who wants this exact same job done. So by posting these types of videos, you're sharing that information with people and you're reminding them, oh, I also need to get that done. So in terms of breaking down the numbers, like I mentioned earlier, the rough estimate, or the final estimate or quote, was about $1,400. In terms of supplies that I purchased, I was around $326. Again, keep in mind, I bought extra nails, I bought a few other things. One thing I didn't put in here is I actually bought a nail gun, a Metabo nail gun. I didn't put it into the price of this job because I'll amortize that over the course of using this tool. But previously I'd been doing this kind of hand screwing things, and I was like, you know what, this job's gonna pay me enough, I'm gonna go get the nailer. And I'm glad I did, because I used the heck out of that thing. But in terms of material, I was about $328 or so. So if I take the revenue minus the materials, I end up with a gross profit of around $1,156, right? Sounds good, but that's gross profit, right? That doesn't take out other things, the overhead of running my business and the taxes that I have to pay as a single member LLC. So if I go in there and I subtract out the operating expenses, and I'm saying, you know, a couple $100 a month, and that includes my insurance, some of the software systems that I use, my Google sites, a few other things, that's a fixed cost that gets spread out. The more jobs you have, the more you can spread it out. But as you know, if you've been doing this kind of work for a while, sometimes you got a lot of jobs, sometimes you don't. So in this case, I just threw a couple $100 at it. And then in addition to that, I took out the taxes. So I estimate taxes of 30% of my gross profit number. So I do all that math, and I end up with a net profit of $710. So that's money in my pocket of $710, right? Now the magic question is, how many hours did I work to get that $710. In this case, I worked about 6 hours. That included a trip to Lowe's and back, and even my commute over to the job. Like I said, it was a back-breaking thing. I got home, I think I went to bed at 7 o'clock that night, and I was just wiped out and exhausted. Even the next day, my whole body was kind of hurting. But to me, if I take that net profit of $710 minus the 6 hours that I put into it, I made about $118 an hour in my pocket, gross profit. These kind of jobs I like, even though they kill me physically. If you're a young guy, you probably do this all day long. But for me, I got to space these jobs out. I'm not doing something like this every day. But this is one example. If you're trying to get your foot in the door, it's not a complicated job. You just need to make sure structurally you know what you're doing. You need to make sure that the floor joists underneath that will bear the load. In this case, I had to notch some out. I don't think you'll see it in the video, but in order to get these things level, because the rest of the shed had settled down, I had to do some notching out to put these things in there. And then also, in this particular job, the previous plywood had gone under the supporting 2x4s that held up the walls. Well, when I had to cut everything out, I had to cut some of that out as well. So I essentially had to rebuild some of that structure. So after I put the plywood in, I had to come back with some 2x4 scrap that I had and just basically make sure that connections were still good so that it's structurally bearing and it maintains that. So make sure you kind of know what you're doing with that. If not, maybe talk to a carpenter or somebody else who can kind of steer you in the right direction. But overall, I think it was a pretty decent job. I would definitely recommend it if you're trying to get in there. Just especially if you're getting new into this. Hey, does anybody have a rotted shed floor? Because a lot of people do. Would you like an estimate to repair this? In terms of how did I come up with this estimate? I gotta think about it. I've been doing this for a while. So it's basically like, how much do I want to make knowing what a pain in the butt this kind of job is? And that's why I shot high. I did go out and I saw after the client gave me the dimensions, I knew I needed 5 sheets of pressure treated plywood. So I did the math on that, figured, okay, I'm in this thing at least $300 just for materials and some supplies. And then I factored in, okay, this could be 6 to 10 hours, depending, on how well it goes. Fortunately for me, everything was right next to the road. I walked right in the gate and the shed was right there. So it was perfect. So I was able to get in and out in 6 hours. But I would, if you have to go around the house, you have to carry everything in, you have to carry everything out. Cause I had to get rid of all the stuff that I took out too. And I could just go right to my truck right away. If you don't have that kind of access, add a little bit more time, understand the access is probably the big takeaway or the big tip there. But anyway, this is my job of the week. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and let me know. If you like this kind of content, go ahead and let me know by hitting the thumbs up, subscribing, and sharing with anybody. And stay tuned for the next one. I appreciate it. Oh, by the way, P3, for those guys in the Navy who may spend some time, this is one of the coolest airplanes. So if you ever have any questions on that, feel free to reach out. Take care. Bye.